They might look scary and serious standing around protecting the president, but there's a lot more to the Secret Service than what meets the eye. From funny code names to a kind-hearted way of protecting one president, today we're telling you 10 mind-blowing facts about the Secret Service. The Secret Service are known for keeping things ultimately top secret, so we'll let you in on one fact that can't stop us from spreading before we start. Click the subscribe button and you'll be able to go to a whole load of other cool videos with hundreds of secrets. One day too late. The Secret Service was created on a very unfortunate day. Realizing he might be in need of some more security, Abraham Lincoln thought up the idea of a Secret Service and brought it into practice on one very ironic day, coincidentally the day he was actually assassinated. Sadly enough, it seems the Secret Service didn't get their act in gear fast enough, because on April 14, 1865, the president was shot in the theater later that afternoon. They definitely seem to have stepped up their game now, but you know what they say about too little too late, although their primary aim wasn't actually to look after the president, which brings us on to our next fact. It was built for finance purposes. The Secret Service wasn't actually created for protection, but instead as a division of the Treasury Department. Its original plan was to crack down on proliferation of counterfeit currency, because at the time it was a problem that looked like it could have a serious effect on the American economy. Sure, it does some work on the financial situation of the country now, but its primary aim is to now ensure the safety of our President of the United States, along with the Vice President, their families, and former presidents. We are not surprised that they seem to be adding more and more officers to the list, because the numbers just seem to keep growing of those who need protection. It didn't take security too seriously at first. And it wasn't even a direct result of Abraham Lincoln's assassination that pushed the Secret Service to start protecting as well as talking about money. It took a while longer until the 1901 assassination of President William McKinley before the Secret Service realized their talents could be more useful elsewhere. But this doesn't mean to say that we've been entirely successful, because we've all been told the story of Robert F. Kennedy's assassination by Syrian in 1968. But they seem to have really improved their services now, even to protect potential president-to-be, and they offered Barack Obama protection a year and a half before he was even elected. It's almost 100% safe. Unlike most other important agencies, the Secret Service has never had a traitor in their list of employees. Most others that you can think of, including the NSA, CIA, and FBI, have all been called out for having one or two moles in their ranks. But the Secret Service has an entirely clean record. We imagine the huge, complex system you have to work through before gaining employment probably helps maintain that squeaky clean record, and the fact that if you're caught trying to spread secret information or doing something bad to the president yourself, you'll be waving goodbye to any kind of freedom for the rest of your life. If nothing else, we don't even want to consider what type of techniques these guys have got under their belts to keep us away, so we'd be too scared to spill the secrets if we were agents anyway. It created the FBI. By now you'll have learned when the Secret Service was created and what it was created to do. But did you know that we also have the Secret Service to thank for another important division of the government? That's right, the actual FBI was created through the Secret Service. It came about in 1908 when the Department of Justice realized they needed some agents to conduct investigations on a national level. Instead of recruiting from anywhere else in the country, they decided to speed things up a little and pick some agents directly from the Secret Service. 9 agents, in fact. Then, the official Bureau of Investigations was created. Soon after, they added the federal to the name, and the FBI launched to crack down on all those pesky nationwide criminals. Only one agent has ever died in service. You might be thinking that being a Secret Service agent is arguably the scariest job in the world. As part of the application process, you're supposed to basically promise you'd give your own life before letting someone else take the life of a president or his family. And that's not something we've been asked to do in our standard day-to-day jobs. But while this may seem like a lot to ask from an employee, you might be relieved to hear that only one person has ever had to put this to the test. In November in the year 1950, 2 Puerto Rican nationalists stormed the house that President Harry Truman was living in. Sadly, they shot Private Leslie Coffett 3 times, who first shot one of the assassins in the head. Unfortunately, Coffett didn't survive. There are plenty of officers around. There's a whole load of officers, believe it or not. But while most famous people only have a handful of security guards, if that, the president and his family are going to need a lot more. In fact, there are more than 6,500 officers in the Secret Service, including 3,200 special agents, 1,300 uniformed division officers, and more than 2,000 other specialized administrative, professional, and technical support personnel. We're not entirely sure what each of these titles equates to, and how many of the 6,000 are expected to risk their lives, but we bet it's a lot of them. But with that many people looking out to keep you alive, we like to think the president can sleep at night, because who could surely find their way through that many people? Some don't always take the role seriously. Not all of the officers are so well behaved. Most famously, 11 Secret Service agents who were working in Colombia were relieved of their services, which means fired, to everyone else, after reports that they'd been drinking and making more than a few misjudged decisions along the way. Perhaps they thought they'd have a bit of a break from saving the president while on foreign grounds, or maybe they just didn't think they'd get caught. Either way, the 11 officers were interviewed after these reports got out and were ultimately given a break from their employment services. It sounds like they had a pretty good break in the first place, we think, but was it really worth losing their jobs? They use hilarious code names. You might think that code names are an overused cliche, but they're still pretty common within the Secret Service. And we're not just talking about strange codes for different types of disasters either, although we wouldn't put it past them to use those too. But the funniest code names that agents have used all relate back to the names for the US presidents, first ladies, and important places. For example, John and Jackie Kennedy were known as Lancer and Lace, while Ronald and Nancy Reagan were secretly called Rawhide and Rainbow. The Pentagon was referred to as Calico, and the White House was known as the Castle. Well, at least the latter is fairly accurate. They genuinely care about their presidents. The agents were sometimes kind-hearted, especially to those they were there to protect. You might have heard about President Franklin Roosevelt's disability, or you might not have. The late president had polio, which eventually cost him the use of both of his legs. But while paparazzi would go after him and try to capture photos of him struggling to walk or using a wheelchair, the Secret Service were one step ahead of them. It might have seemed too harsh to fully try and hurt someone who was taking a harmless photo, so they chose to direct their anger at the camera itself instead. It would either be confiscated or they'd be accidentally destroyed in some type of slip-up. Whoops. We're most definitely going to look twice at every Secret Service agent we see now to check if they're quietly comparing codenames or doing anything just a bit strange. We hope you enjoyed this video and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.